Okay, we're back. It's assignment 13, financial power of attorney and elder abuse. And today is Monday, June 19th.
That's right, Juneteenth. All right, I'm going to move myself out of the way here, and we're just going to go right into it. There it is. Up.
There.
There.
That's the one. Financial power of attorney.
Awesome.
Okay. So we've given you a short thing to read from AARP that gives you kind of the basics. So I told you in the last lecture that it's easy to get a free online form for durable power of attorney for healthcare. Now, power of attorney for financial, because you're dealing with money, the institutions that hold your money, whether it's your bank or your brokerage account or whatever, they're going to be a little pickier about it. So to get a decent financial power of attorney, you're a lot more likely to have to hire a lawyer.
Because what's the number one form of elder abuse?
Financial. Elder abuse. So, and typically when you're dealing with banks, even if you have an attorney draft a power of attorney for financial purposes, your bank's going to want to use their own form. So that makes life a little bit complicated.
And this is kind of going back, make sure the beneficiaries are indicated, and make sure, you have people's names, assigned to all the different accounts so they can go in there and work for you in advance, right?
Yes. Yeah, so what you would do with your bank is you would ask them, do you have a form of power of attorney? Now, what's the best kind of power of attorney for you? If you're 18 years old, you probably don't need a power of attorney right now. If you get a little bit older and you're trying to buy a house, or you're dealing with bank accounts, or you're dealing with life insurance, or you're my age, then I have a power of attorney, a financial power of attorney that we put together when we set up our estate plan. John's my number one. My son is number two, my older son, and my younger son's number three.
How about Desi and Lucy?
So if I'm not able to pay my bills, if I'm in the hospital, if I'm sick, if I'm not able to sign documents, those people can do that for me. So the principal is me. I'm the principal. Think I'm the main person. And the agent is John or my sons, who I am giving my power to. I am transferring my power from me to them. Just like you hire a real estate agent to help you buy a house or sell a house, then I make my agent, John, you're my agent, you're going to take care of stuff for me. Okay, so a lot of people get that answer wrong on the quiz. So it's very common in business. For example, I'm handling my dad's estate. His properties are in Louisiana. I'm out here. It's a little bit complicated. We're trying to sell some properties, and I don't want to have to fly back and forth every time a property sells to be there at the closing and sign the documents. So I've named the estate lawyer. I've given him power of attorney to sign documents for me. It's a very, very specific limited power of attorney. It's only the power of attorney to sign documents for the sale of this specific property at this time.
And this guy resides in Slidell, Louisiana, where everything is taking place.
So he can't come out to California and sell my house out from under me. I trust him anyway. However, so you could have a very limited power of attorney for that type of purpose. And I would recommend, if in the future you suddenly become fabulously wealthy and you're dealing with financial planners and things like that, be very careful about who you give power over your accounts, to handle tasks and things like that, and make sure that you're monitoring whoever has that power over your accounts. Because we've certainly seen a lot of stories. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, a lot of famous
Dennis
people.
Rodman.
Dennis Rodman. A lot of famous people have had.
Hey, sound familiar? Really rich athletes who are throwing their whole selves into their careers. Same thing happens in entertainment. The Bernie Madoff and all that, even looking at Stephen Curry got all wrapped up into whatchamacallit, crypto.
Yes, unfortunately. Okay, so you can have a broad or a narrow power of attorney. You can have very specific ones. The one that I gave John, because I trust him completely, is usually the form says, he can sell real estate, he can handle the bank accounts, he can handle my life insurance, he can handle health insurance. And then at the bottom, there's a box that says all of the above. So I've given John the power to do anything for me at any time. From the time I sign that document until the time I die, he can do anything he needs to, and I'm not worried about it.
Completely shared accounts. It's one of the recipes of success, guys. Believe me, there's never separate monies. There's no separate lives. Everything is uniform.
The reality is, I handle all of our finances, so John actually doesn't know how to do any of this stuff.
No. But I talk a good talk.
I know that if he needed to figure it out, he's very, very smart and very capable, and I love him, and so he can figure it out if he needed to, but he doesn't have to, because I'm so good. Okay, the types of power of attorneys. So you can have a conventional power of attorney. That's what I gave my attorney in Slidell, Louisiana. It was effective the date I signed it. It ends as of, if I become incapacitated or after the time period that's specified in the document. Then there's a springing power of attorney, which sounds good, but it's a little complicated. That springs into effect when you become incapacitated. The reason I don't like it as a lawyer is who's going to decide that you're incapacitated. Then there's, the potential for litigation over that issue.
I'm in the right spot here?
Yeah, you're fine. So, and then there's a durable power of attorney. That's what I've signed to give John the power from the date I sign it until the date of my death, the power that he can handle things. And that's kind of nice because we don't know if I fall down the stairs and hit my head and I'm unconscious and I'm in the hospital. We don't know when that's going to happen. So
almost happened in Costa Rica.
I did fall down the stairs in Costa Rica.
She did.
And I got a really nice bruise. It's about 12 inches by 4 inches.
It kind of looked like Vermont.
The good news is I landed on my butt, and that is the most padded part of my body, and so everything was good. So anyway, too much information, right? So who are you going to choose to be your agent for your power of attorney? Interestingly enough, it may not be the same person that you pick to be your power of attorney for healthcare. You want the person who is your power of attorney for healthcare to be someone who can go into the hospital and make healthcare decisions and listen to the doctors and listen to your wishes and kind of make sure it all happens. The person that you want to be your power of attorney for financial, you want that person to be very detail oriented, you want that person to be very honest, you want that person to be very financially stable. So you're not going to give a power of attorney to your friend or your neighbor or your loved one who has financial problems, who has drug or alcohol problems, who might be tempted to take your money and, and run and skip town. So just be careful. Choose someone who has their own money, who is independently doing okay, someone who's going to keep good records. And then, so let's say you have a grandmother and she needs help paying her bills, because one of the first things that people start having trouble with, one of the first signs of dementia is paying bills late. So that person needs help managing their bills, managing their bank account. So she gives your cousin power of attorney over her bank account. Great. Let's give another cousin, or maybe everyone in the whole family, let's set up an account with an app like Mint, which I use, and it flags things. It tells me, hey, you paid too much on your internet bill this month, or hey, your Verizon bill was a little bit high this month, or hey, we think that you double paid, your Metro tickets or something like that. And so you'd have access to that account, which we link to credit cards, checking account, savings account, brokerage accounts, and you can see live every day, oh, these are the costs that are coming through. So that if your cousin who's handling bills for your grandmother, if your cousin suddenly starts to get a little taste of the good life, and all of a sudden you're seeing, wait a minute, grandma just bought a really high-end stereo system for a car. That doesn't make sense because grandma doesn't have a car. Or grandma just went out to dinner and spent $1,000 on steaks and really fine wines at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. Okay, that doesn't sound like grandma because she doesn't have teeth. So you want to make sure that someone else is monitoring the movement of funds and the payment of bills so that you're not surprised. So oversight and monitoring is key. Now, the person who has the power of attorney for financial, they don't have a legal right to the contents of the bank accounts. They don't have a legal right to the property. They don't have the legal right to use it for their own benefit. It's their only job is to help pay the bills and to sign contracts and to do things that are necessary to carry out things. So For example, I did a lot of stuff with my dad before he passed away, dealing with his health insurance. So I had some limited authorization from him to do that. Now, how do you cancel it? So let's say you've named cousin to be power of attorney for grandma, and cousin gets a little weird and starts going out to lunch all the time and taking their friends out and buying, new clothes and stuff like that. You tear it up. You tear up the power of attorney. You sign a new one naming someone else. You send a letter to the cousin saying, we've canceled your power of attorney. You tell the bank this person doesn't have power of attorney anymore. And so you have to come up with a new form and cancel it and make sure that you're communicating that the old form is canceled. And the banks are supposed to be alert to someone who's being subject to financial abuse, but it's a gray area when it's a family member. So are they going to object if the family member comes in and withdraws a couple $100? Maybe not. But if they're doing it every day for a month, suddenly grandma doesn't have money anymore.
And again, the most common form of elder abuse is financial abuse, and
by a family member.
Most common perpetrator
yes.
is the family member.
So. Yeah. So yes, so you can get a financial power of attorney, and I think John mentioned earlier, and we'll talk about this next week. The thing that you should be doing when you're 18 or older, if you have your own bank account, make sure that you have set in place a transfer on death or payable on death beneficiary statement for your checking account, your savings account, any brokerage account, or Roth IRA, or any sort of investment account that you have, life insurance. And we'll talk about that next week. But it kind of goes hand in hand with dealing with banks and getting the paperwork in order. Okay. Right, so let's talk about elder abuse.
Okay, we're done with this. And yes. It just goes over to some scenarios that you can check out, people with dementia and stuff like that.
Yeah, and so by having a power of attorney for healthcare and a power of attorney for financial, you are avoiding the very expensive, difficult process of getting a guardianship or conservatorship over an elderly person who can't manage their own affairs anymore. And so it is much, much less expensive to get a power of attorney in place than it would be to get a guardianship in place, which might cost $5,000.
That's actually a career track. There are people that do this for a living, and of course they charge fees. So.
Yes, okay. So I want to talk about elder abuse. We have some graphics that are USC colors because they're from our USC Center on Elder Abuse. And when we look at the frequency of elder abuse, it's very frequent. So 1 in 10 elderly people report some sort of abuse or mistreatment in the last year. And then when we look at the types, the most frequent in the US is current financial abuse by a family member, potential neglect, emotional abuse. So I'm verbally abusive to you, I isolate you. Physical abuse, fortunately, is second to last, and sexual abuse is last. 90% of abusers are family members. Why? Because they have access. They have access. They're stressed by caregiving. So adult children, spouses, partners, nieces, nephews, grandchildren, cousins.
So with neglect, you're the responsible party. You're supposed to be doing the caregiving and looking out for the elder. And you just say, screw it, I'm going to go move to Costa Rica for a couple months and leave them hanging.
Or you just leave your family member in dirty diapers and without food and access to medication or medical treatment or whatever it is that they need. But and that can happen because people are overwhelmed, and it can happen when people are just bad people. So because most of the perpetrators are family members, 93% of elder abuse is not reported. The elderly person tends to be ashamed. They tend to be afraid. If I report this, what's going to happen? What if it's my child? Is my child going to go to jail? If my child goes to jail, who's going to take care of me? There's a tremendous amount of just shame and fear involved, and that's why they don't get reported. The other reason it doesn't get reported is that people who have dementia are at very high risk of elder abuse. So almost half of people with dementia had been subject to elder abuse by their caregivers. It's very stressful dealing with someone who has dementia. And they are also, I think, people who maybe they say, well, so-and-so hit me. and the person, maybe they're seeing, someone else, a doctor, someone else, and that person thinks, oh, it's just the dementia talking. So we need to really be careful if an older person who has dementia says, hey, so-and-so tied me up, or so-and-so took my glasses, or so-and-so won't let me leave the house. Maybe it's the dementia talking, and maybe it's real. And we really need to do a little bit more of an investigation when we hear this. So self-neglect is associated with higher mortality rates. So elderly people who are self-neglecting, they stop eating, they stop showering, they stop putting on clean clothes. That's usually a really bad sign.
And we have these social service agency, people from social work, they specialize in this kind of. We actually sat down with a couple of social workers yesterday, so that they specifically get trained in issues relevant to the aging population.
So that person who's self-neglecting needs support. So they might need someone to come in and help them with laundry, or they might need someone to come in and help them with meals. Those who are victims, confirmed victims of elder abuse, are two times more likely to die. So it increases mortality in a very significant way. Even if it's just suspected but not proven, it's almost 1.5 times more likely to die. I wanted to look at the World Health Organization graphics because often I have students say to me, oh, this elder abuse thing is an American problem, and I totally get it. In the US, we are guilty of having a culture that's fascinated with youth. And it does appear that we don't value and treasure our older people as much as many people do in other countries. However much that's true, I think it's also really important for people to understand that elder abuse is increasing around the world. No matter what country you're in, there are problems with elder abuse, largely because of the burdens that happen with caregivers and the lack of support. So, the World Health Organization just talks about physical abuse, explaining what that is like, and verbal abuse, things like that. What are the risk factors? So I think this is really interesting. We can predict who's likely to be a victim. We can predict who's likely to be an abuser. So if you are dependent with a significant disability, that's a strong risk factor. Being in poor physical health, so you're not very mobile. Suffering from depression, you may be less likely to complain. You may be less likely to get out of the house and have contact with other people, so you may be socially isolated. Being low income is a strong risk factor. Now, why is that? My law school professor used to say rich people get better stuff. So if I'm a wealthy older person, I might have a cleaning lady that comes into my house and sees me. I might have a pool guy that cleans my pool. I might have a gardener that does my yard. I might have
lots of eyes on you.
I might have someone that delivers my groceries. I might have a personal trainer that comes a couple days a week. So all of a sudden, I've got all these people that come and see me and can identify when I'm struggling, or when I'm having problems, or when my glasses are broken, or my face is bruised, or I've got marks on my wrists. And all of these people can help me get help. So rich people get better stuff. They probably have less elder abuse. Not always, but often. Being cognitively impaired, dementia is a very, very strong risk factor, and being socially isolated. So if you don't have a support group of people that you can tell when you're being abused, and that can identify when you're being abused, and that's a big deal. So for the abuser, go back up. Okay. So for the abuser, if they have depression, they're going to be less able to handle the stress of dealing with caregiving for someone who's elderly and needs a lot of support. If they have an addiction problem, alcohol or drug addiction, that might make them more likely to financially abuse or physically abuse the elderly person. And if they're dependent, so, I'm the grandson and I don't have anywhere else to live except with my grandmother, and my grandmother makes me, furious all the time with the stuff that she says to me, but I'm financially dependent on her and I don't feel like there's a way out, then that person can react and lash out at that elderly person. And so those are, sorry.
Hold on a sec. Just open it. Hold on a sec. Matt, open the door for him.
There was a siren that went by, and now the doggies are outside.
It's Dave's outside.
But Okay, so let's keep going.
Right, sorry, guys.
So there's a couple experts here talking about the different things. One of the experts, who's an MD and has a master's in public health, talks about elder abuse increasing and the stigma that's attached to elder abuse among older Chinese adults. And we see an increased risk of suicide because they don't see a way out. They see the incredible shame of having a family member do this to them. And so when your culture is very much based on filial piety and caring and respecting for elderly people, when the elder abuse does happen, it's almost worse than it would be in a traditional U.S. Family, where we almost expect.
This guy has a wealth management company, so you get all the perspectives of all the backgrounds here, really.
Yeah. Sexual abuse, they talk about the fact that sexual abuse can be staff in a nursing home. It can be another patient in a nursing home. And so if you have an older relative with dementia who's in a nursing home or in a care facility for people with dementia, you want to keep an eye out and just see, how are the other patients? Do I have to be concerned that another patient's going to be dangerous for my grandmother or my grandfather? Okay, and you
Awesome.
can just go down.
All right, our prompt. Oh no, there's this thing right here. Sorry.
Okay.
But it gives you a little. We also want you to think about this. Okay, so there's prompts in between these graphics.
Yeah.
Okay? Awesome.
So loneliness and isolation, big risk factors, not only for elder abuse, but just in general. Mental and physical decline for older people. It's the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. We all know smoking's bad for you, but being lonely is just as bad as smoking.
And there's a lot of discussion about loneliness being a huge epidemic in our country right now.
Yes, higher risk of dementia. A lot of seniors feel lonely. What are the factors that increase loneliness? Being over 80, because you're likely to be frail. You're likely to maybe have trouble driving and go down. Sorry,
I'm just
right here.
Okay,
you're having chronic health problems, so that you're not physically able to get out and do a lot. You don't have good contact with your family. You're low income, so it's not like you're going on cruises and vacations and you don't have like a bunco club that you're part of. And changing family structures. So we have isolation with older people if there's been divorces and maybe people have drifted apart and just a loss of family connection. So we see a lot of depression caused by loneliness and isolation among older people. And how do we solve this? Because I know a lot of times students say to us, hey, you're very much bumming us out by telling us all the bad news without telling us any good news. There are a lot of solutions. We can use technology to increase interactivity. Even during the pandemic, older people were FaceTiming or using Zoom or iPads or phones to video chat with their relatives. Older people, remember, I'm pretty old. I'm great with computers. I know how to use my phone. I know how to use a lot of software. So the people that are getting older now should be pretty comfortable with computers. And so, try to find ways to reach out to your grandparents and email them or text them or drop them a note in the mail or call them. It means so much to people who are isolated.
They will appreciate it, definitely.
So using technology to help seniors stay connected. Getting better access to transportation. So if I'm a senior citizen and I'm frail and I can't drive, is there a van that can transport me to the shopping mall or transport me to the local senior center where they have bridge club or art classes or exercise classes? And we need to do a better job of creating senior-friendly communities. So the housing for elderly people should be close to centers where they can walk to the grocery store and walk to the drugstore and walk to Starbucks. Walk to the library.
These are these multi-gen communities that I've been talking about that you guys really have to plan ahead. I know a lot of you guys are getting into real estate development. You think to the future.
So there's so many ways that we can make life better. If you have an older person in your family who is needing care, who has dementia, and has a caregiver that's not a family member or is a family member, keep an eye on them. Keep an eye on their bank accounts. Go over to their house. Is jewelry missing? Is our personal belongings missing? Pull their credit report. Make sure that credit cards aren't being opened in their name.
And going back to staying in touch, I was thinking about not this year, but last year we were in Costa Rica and we were driving this most horrendous road, and the driver was talking to his grandmother. He was actually FaceTiming with her, so it was all good. And he was doing this, da, da, da. And she was 102, remember? 102, and it was classic. She had she was like this with
she didn't know what to do. It was the cutest thing ever.
But he does it all the time with her, which is awesome.
And he said to us, because it was a driving rain and we're on a mountain road and it was a little scary. And he says, yeah, but when your 102-year-old grandmother calls, you pick up the phone. Right. You don't not answer. Yeah. So our homework for you is call your mom and dad, call your grandparents.
We have a lot of things.
Stay in touch.
These are serious issues, that not just beyond this, but just that we've discussed with you. So hope you guys enjoyed this.
All right.
We're done. Peace. All right. And we'll see you next week.
Let us know if you need anything.
All right. See you.